Welcome to Suspicious Nights. Today we bring you The 5 Orange Pips by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle created the immortal character of Sherlock Holmes, probably one of the most beloved fictional characters ever created. Sherlock Holmes first appeared in Beaton's Christmas Annual in 1887. Enjoy the journey with Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson as they proceed to solve the mystery of the 5 Orange Pips. When I glance over my notes and records of Sherlock Holmes cases between the years 1882 and 1890, I am faced by so many which present strange and interesting features that it is no easy matter to know which to choose and which to leave. Some, however, have already gained publicity through the papers, and others have not offered a field for those peculiar qualities which my friend possessed in so high a degree, and which it is the object of these papers to illustrate. Some too have baffled his analytical skill and would be as narratives, beginning without an ending, while others have been partially cleared up and have their explanations founded rather upon conjecture and surmise than on that absolute logical proof which was so dear to him. There is, however, one of these last which was so remarkable in its details and so startling in its results that I am tempted to give some account of it in spite of the fact that there are points in connection with it which have never been and probably never will be cleared entirely up. It was in the later days of September, and the gales had set in with exceptional violence. All day and night had screamed and the rain had beaten against the windows, so that even here in the heart of great handmade London, we were forced to raise our mind for the instant from our routine of life, and to recognize the presence of those great elemental forces which shriek at mankind through the bars of his civilization, like untamed beasts in a cage. As evening drew in, the storm grew higher and louder, and the wind cried and sobbed like a child in the chimney. Sherlock Holmes sat moodily on one side of the fireplace, cross-indexing his records of crime, while I at the other was deep in one of Clark Russell's fine sea stories until the howl of the gale from without seemed to blend with the text and the splash of the rain to lengthen out into the long swash of sea waves. My wife was on a visit to her mother's, and for a few days I was a dweller once more in my old quarters at Baker Street. "Why," said I, glancing up at my companion, "that was surely Bell. Who could come tonight? Some friend of yours, perhaps?" "Except yourself, I have none," he answered. "I do not encourage visitors." "A client, then?" "If so, it is a serious case. Nothing less would bring a man out on such a day and at such an hour. But I take it that it is more likely to be some crony of the landlady's." Sherlock Holmes was wrong in his conjecture, however, for there came a step in the passage and a tapping at the door. He stretched out his long arm to turn the lamp away from himself and towards the vacant chair upon which a newcomer must sit. "Come in," said he. The man who entered was young, some 22 at outside, well-groomed and trimly clad, with something of a refinement and delicacy in his bearing. The streaming umbrella which he had held in his hand and his long shining waterproof told of the fierce weather through which he had come. He looked about him anxiously, and in the glare of the lamp I could see his face was pale and his eyes heavy, like those of a man who is weighed down with some great anxiety. "I owe you an apology. I trust that I am not intruding. I fear that I have brought some trouble of the storm and rain into your snug chamber." "Give me your coat and umbrella. They may rest here on the hook and will be dry presently. You have come up from the southwest, I see." "Yes, from Horsham." "That clay and chalk mixture which I see upon your toe caps is quite distinctive." "I have come for advice." "That is easily got." "And help." "That is not always so easy." "I've heard of you, Mr. Holmes. I heard from Major Prendergast how you saved him in the Tankerville Club scandal." "Ah, of course. He was wrongfully accused of cheating at cards." "He said you could solve anything." "He said too much." "That you are never beaten." "I've been beaten 4 times, 3 times by a man and once by a woman." "But what is that compared with the number of your success?" "It is true that I've been generally successful." "Then you may be so with me." "I beg that you will draw your chair up to the fire and favor me with some details as to your case." "It is no ordinary one." "None of those which come to me are. I am the last court of appeal." And yet I question, sir, whether in all your experience you have ever listened to a more mysterious and inexplicable chain of events than those which have happened in my own family. You have filled me with interest. Pray, give us the essential facts from the commencement, and I can afterwards question you as to those details which seem to me to be the most important. The young man pulled his chair up and pushed his wet feet towards the blaze. My name is John Openshaw, but my own affairs have, as far as I can understand, little to do with this awful business. It is a hereditary matter, so in order to give you an idea of the facts, I must go back to the commencement of the affair. You must know that my grandfather had two sons, my uncle Elias and my father Joseph. My father had a small factory at Coventry, which enlarged at the time of the invention of bicycling. He was a patentee at the Openshaw Unbreakable Tire, and his business met with such success that he was able to sell it and to retire upon a handsome competence. My uncle Elias emigrated to America when he was a young man, and he became a painter in Florida, where he was reported to have done very well. At the time of the war, he fought in Jackson's army, and afterwards under Hood, he rose to be a colonel. When Lee laid down his arms, my uncle returned to his plantation, where he remained for 3 or 4 years. About 1869 or 1870, he came back to Europe and took a small estate in Sussex near Horsham. He had made a very considerable fortune in the States, and his reason for leaving them was his aversion to the Negroes and his dislike for the Republican policy in extending the franchise to them. He was a singular man, fierce and quick-tempered, very foul-mouthed when he was angry, and of a most retiring disposition. During all the years he lived at Horsham, I doubt that ever he set foot in the town. He had a garden and 2 or 3 fields round his house, and there he would take his exercise. Though very often for weeks on end, he would never leave his room. He drank a great deal of brandy and smoked very heavily, but he would see no society and did not want any friends, not even his own brother. He didn't mind me. In fact, he took a fancy to me, for at the time when he saw me first, I was a youngster of 12 or so. This would be in the year 1878, after he had been 8 or 9 years in England. He begged my father to let me live with him, and he was very kind to me in this way. When he was sober, he used to be fond of playing backgammon and draughts with me, and he would make me his representative both with the servants and with the tradespeople, so that by the time I was 16, I was quite master of the house. I kept all the keys and could go where I liked and do what I liked, so long as I did not disturb him in his privacy. There was one single exception, however, for he had a single room, a lumber room among the attics, which was invariably locked, and which he would never permit either me or anyone else to enter. With a boy's curiosity, I have peeped through a keyhole, but I have never been able to see more than a collection of old trunks and bundles as would be expected in such a room. One day, it was in March 1883, a letter with a foreign stamp lay upon the table in front of Colonel's plate. It was not a common thing for him to receive letters. He had no friends of any sort.
From India,
he said as he took it up. Pondicherry postmark. What can this be? He opened it up hurriedly. Out there jumped 5 little dried orange pips, which pattered down from his plate. I began to laugh at this, but the laugh was struck from my lips at the sight of his face. His lip had fallen, his eyes were protruding, his skin the color of putty, and he glared at the envelope which he still held in his trembling hand.
K,
he shrieked.
And my God, my sins have overtaken me. My God!
Thank you for listening to the first episode of The 5 Orange Pips for Arthur Conan Doyle. Subscribe to the channel for more.